Do you believe in God? I do not know if God exists, and I don't think we can either prove or disprove it. We simply don't have all the data. Maybe all the data we need are right in front of us, but we don't yet know how to read it. My family is extremely religious. They are Hindus. They worship many gods, the creator, the destroyer, and the one who maintains the balance. They don't merely worship these gods, they celebrate them. Very early on, I was repeatedly taught that no atom would even move, no seasons will ever change if not for God. God is the reason for everything. It is the absolute. It was intended to impress me and solidify my belief, but it did something exactly opposite. It made me angry. If God made even the atoms move, then it is also the reason for all the sufferings. If it is all-powerful, then it is letting everything happen. It is responsible for every rape, every murder, and every child's death. So why worship something that's causing all the suffering? I roamed around with this pent-up anger for a while, and I carry that anger even now to a certain extent. But now I realize that things might not be as black and white as I like it to be. For a long time, I equated religion to God. It was also unfortunate that I equated religions to sufferings, because religious separation has led and is leading to brutal wars and ugly violence. I was confused as to why there were so many religions to govern humanity, and why every certain group thinks that they are special and their God is the absolute, while dismissing the rest. As I grew up, my perspective gradually changed. I realized that God is actually an umbrella term. I met a homeless man who considers the restaurant owner who feeds him every day as his God. If you consider simulation hypothesis, then the supercomputer which would run the ancestor simulation model could also be considered God. As I traveled and met people from different cultural backgrounds, I realized that none of the opposites have a distinct line in between. Everything has a gray area. Good and bad, happiness and suffering. Nothing has a stark, distinct line in between. They coexist. I once had a late-night conversation with a man whose religion was Shinto. Shinto is a Japanese religion which doesn't have any primary scriptures or prophets. Shinto's gods are called kami. They are sacred spirits which take the form of the important and quintessential aspects of life. Sun, rain, trees, and rocks can also be kami. The reason why Shinto fascinated me is because that the religion understands ethical ambiguity. Ethics when it comes to Shinto is cultural and most importantly situational. There are no rules or commandments. Shinto has no moral absolutes and assesses the good or bad of an action or thought in the context in which it occurs. Circumstances, intention, purpose, time, and location are all relevant in assessing whether an action is good or bad. Shinto texts have many examples of even kami, their gods, making mistakes and doing the wrong thing. This clear difference with faiths whose God is perfect is probably why Shinto's ethics avoids absolute moral rules. People of a particular tribal region in South Korea believe that humans are a collateral damage caught in the middle of the eternal fight between the good and the bad. In this case, the forces of good and the bad are so mighty and magnificent, they're both indifferent to humanity. Our very existence itself is a tiny byproduct of this fight. The tribal religion's definition of God literally translates to that which cannot be known. I feel like no matter what we do, we are always in search of God, that which cannot be known. Our journey, no matter what we believe, is a step towards that understanding. In an essence, a scientist and a priest share the same journey. Their perspectives may differ, but they both strive to understand. Actually, this quest to understand is looming in the background of all of our creations. From the finest poems to the greatest scientific breakthrough, every single thing we create is an attempt to understand a bit more. Once I asked a good friend to describe what the term God meant for her. Her reply floored me completely. She thinks that God is everywhere, not just everywhere, but we are in God. Our surroundings, the environment, things we encounter every day are God. but we are unaware of its existence as there is no anti-environment that enables us to perceive the element we live in. She further offered an analogy of the fish in the water, but I am going to quote Albert Einstein on this one. Of what is significant in one's own existence, one is hardly aware, and it certainly should not bother the other fellow. What does a fish know about the water in which he swims all his life? Years later, I revisited Hinduism to study some of its primary texts, not because I believed in a religion, but because I was open to knowledge from an ancient source. At that point, I was more curious than resentful. To my surprise, I found that Vedas, Hinduism's oldest scriptures, don't preach an all-powerful God. Instead, they attempt to understand God. Vedas claim that once formless and infinite, the absolute consciousness craved to experience separation, the polar opposites, and the in-between. It wanted to witness pain, suffering, happiness, sadness, birth, death, life, and loss. So it manifested itself into individual consciousness to witness its own magnificence. It is the observer, and it is that which is observed. I still wouldn't call myself a Hindu, much to my dad's dismay. I do not want to fit into any religion. I am probably an agnostic, I simply don't know. But I definitely learned to appreciate new perspectives that aids in my understanding, even if those perspectives comes from religious texts. I am fortunate to have a few friends in my life who's as invested and even obsessed in this understanding as I am, because I do often hear some excellent perspective-altering quotes. One of them is, "God is hiding in between thoughts." And another friend, when he was addressing my anger towards the unknown, said this, "In all probability, you will die without finding God or understanding the workings of the universe. Your anger is not going to help it in any way. Just surrender. Surrender not to any God, but surrender to the fact that you don't know anything. Be silent and observe, it will find you." True to his words, once it did find me. I call it the God experience. It was 3 a.m. I was sitting alone in the shores of a lake in the middle of a forest in northern Canada, looking at the still water, the mist, and the moonlight. I was silent while observing the quietness and the stillness. I was completely present in the moment. It hit me out of nowhere. It was like a trance. What I felt then needed no explanation. It was the absolute. I was completely content. For that second, I didn't need any answers, nor was I searching for anything. It felt like I knew everything there was to know. That second felt like an eternity. That was God for me. Eventually, I came out of the trance, or maybe it left me. Then life continued like nothing ever happened, and so did my search of understanding. I am extremely happy to announce that this series, Journal of Things, is now listed on IMDb under TV series category. I'm including the link to the IMDb page in the description below, where you can rate and review the series and get information about all the previous 18 episodes. So, before I let you go, I want to ask you, what does the word God mean to you? Please leave your answers in the comments below, where we can further discuss this topic. I'm also including a link to the previous episode where I talk about digital immortality and transhumanism. If you liked this episode, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and turn the notification button on to get notified whenever I post a new video. Most importantly, please share this video in social media to help me find new viewers. I will see you in another video soon. Thank you so much for watching.